Okay, I'm going to show you how I made my vacuum chuck pretty darn cheap. So first of all, I just got a 1/2-inch MDF board. Any board that's not going to warp will work just fine. If the board's warping, it's not going to make a very effective vacuum chuck. And I got a 1/2-inch. I wouldn't go much thinner than that, just because by the time you cut recesses in on both sides, you're not going to have much left if you go much thinner than 1/2-inch. Thicker should be fine. 1/2-inch seems to be working pretty well. Like I said, this is an MDF board. So after the first thing I did was I just cut a circle out on my bandsaw. Then I drilled a hole in the center of that, and I put it on this wormhole chuck, screw chuck, whatever this is called. I put this on, and all I did from there was cut a negative recess on. So yep, I just cut negative recess on. I put it on my chuck, and then after I have it on my chuck, then I trued this up, and then I put the recesses on here. So you want to make sure you put it on your chuck first, because whatever chuck you're going to use first probably isn't going to be perfectly center from this. I know theoretically it should be, but I would put it on your chuck and then do everything. So like I said, I trued this up, and then I put some wood hardener on it just so this doesn't, it's a little dusty. I don't want it kind of coming apart over the years. Hopefully it lasts me that long. And from there, I don't know if you can see this very well, I put a radial bearing in there. I cut a little recess in there for you. There you go. Yep, cut a little recess in, and I put a radial bearing in there, and I super glued that in. And make sure you don't super glue the center part in, just because you don't want this copper tubing rotating. You want the copper tube to hold still as everything else is rotating. So yep, I just cut a little recess in there, and it doesn't need to be absolutely perfectly flush or anything. You just need it down a little bit so this so your foam will lay flat. And then from there, I cut a hole for my copper tubing. The 3/8 hole worked just fine. I just made sure that it was perfectly center from the chuck. So I have this copper tubing goes through my headstock all the way through, and it comes out the back here. And this right here is just foam. This particular thing is a yoga mat. I walked around Walmart, Target, looking for that craft foam, or that foam stuff for crafts, and I was going to put that on here. I couldn't find any, so I just went home and I found an old yoga mat, and I just used this. And it seems to work really well. And I have all these circles to help kind of reference me, because I don't have another chuck to reverse chuck it onto my tailstock and then put it on perfectly center. So I just put these circles to help reference me. It's not absolutely perfect, but it seems to work pretty well. And from there, the copper tubing, it is connected. You don't want to glue these together. This is connected to a copper tube, or the copper tube's connected to a PEX tubing. You don't want to glue these together, just because you won't be able to pull that through your headstock, and you won't be able to pull this through your tailstock. So if you glue these together, this is stuck on your lathe, and you don't want that. And this way, you just need to make one of these deals, and you can make multiple ones of these and just attach it onto this. But down here, I have it. This PEX tubing, it's 3/8 inch, and anything that just fits on top of a copper tube. I just want it somewhat flexible, just so when I'm moving it around, putting on my vacuum, it's a lot more flexible than the copper tubing. So as you can see, I put in my tenon right here to turn on my chuck. I just drilled a 3/8 inch hole down the middle, and then I don't know if you can see that 3/8 inch hole for this PEX tubing. I super glued that in there, so not going to lose any vacuum. And then I also made a hole in here big enough for the vacuum hose, and then I made a little funnel. I kind of had a funnel just in case this wasn't the exact size. If you turn on the vacuum, it will suck itself on here and hold itself, so you don't really have to worry about losing suction. So don't worry about getting this absolutely perfect. As long as you make it kind of a funnel shape, it should work pretty well. So like I said, this is glued on the PEX tubing. PEX tubing is connected, not glued onto the copper tubing. And I have this board here, so it's perfectly center, so it doesn't rub in on here. But yep, this copper tubing is connected to the radial bearing. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's glued to the center, and the outside is glued to the MDF board. So then that way, yep, this copper tubing won't be rotating as this is rotating, because otherwise this whole thing would be flying around all over the place and it wouldn't work. So I'll go ahead and turn it on for you and prove that it works. I'm not going to be able to center it very well just because I only have this one hand. The other hand's running the camera. But here I have a bowl that's already finished. I'm just going to go ahead and put it on here. Alright, so yep, I'm going to turn on my vacuum, and after that you won't be able to hear me. So yep, like I said, it wasn't very centered, but it works pretty well. And I'll just go over the chopping list really quick. I have this soft copper tubing. People also use those lamp rods, and I would much rather have that just because you have to straighten out this tubing. I just couldn't find any at Menards at the time, and I just got frustrated, so I just bought this stuff. This is like $4 or $5 for this whole roll, and this MDF board was about $10 for 2 foot by 4 foot. This yoga mat I already had, so I don't know how much those cost. Just any foam at a craft store, because you just want it to be able to suck it into something. If you just have a piece of wood, it won't be able to suck it on very well. And then I had these rolling door sliders, just a radial bearing of any sort. I got all this at Menards. That's about the only store I have around here. So it all works pretty well. Oh, and then this PEX tubing that cost $1. I just use half of one tube. So, yep. And then this just scrap piece of wood, and shop vac, and some super glue or some sort of glue if you don't have it. But if you have any questions, just let me know. And yeah, thanks.